So welcome to this disability awareness panel. I'm going to quickly read the description of the event so you can get a gist of what it's about. So I put here, it is extremely easy to focus on the negatives of having a health condition that can at first and for a long time seem debilitating. But does society play a big part amongst the construct of disability that has been embedded into our brains, enough for us to believe that we don't have an ability due to the label disability, and that we are incapable of being at ease due to our dis-ease? What if we deconstructed the way we thought about our conditions? What if we used it as a driving force to champion greater change, inspired by our pain, anger and sadness, inflicted by our conditions? We are here to share our experiences and knowledge in discrimination, social constructs of disability, misconceptions, accessibility across our systems, and in turn unite amongst the chaos of aiming to make positive changes happen in our local communities and industry. Sometimes what may seem like our greatest limitation may secretly be our greatest gifts. And I've put a quote here, "The obstacle is the way," and that's by Eckhart Tolle. And before I introduce the panellists and myself, slight disclosure, the purpose of this panel is to open up a conversation about the things I've just mentioned, and for example, discrimination and mental health, mental well-being as well. We are aware that these topics can be triggering, and our priority is your well-being. If you feel uncomfortable at any point or need to talk, Bex is your person. If you want to give a wave and a noise. Okay, let's introduce everyone first, and then we will go into a topic that I've put down here and some the questions. So I want you guys to introduce yourselves first, and then I'll introduce myself because I've got a link with all of you. So name, your relationship to disability if you want to, or with disability awareness, and the music industry, and what you do for work. That was quite a lot, sorry. Name. You go first if you want.
I felt like that's where that was going.
Yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Jessie. I recently graduated from BIMM last year on a songwriting course. Currently it's not related that much to the music industry anymore, I'm afraid, but I do create alternative jewellery, and I do work with alternative bands and kind of sponsor them. So I started my own jewellery brand and worked really hard to kind of just create some links within the alternative music scene so that I can sponsor bands that I felt resonated with my brand. Outside of that, I actually work as I work as talent lead for accessibility at Apple UK. So I get the privilege of being able to, help ensure that what we do is inclusive.
Thank you. Jenny?
Hi, I'm Jenny Skelton. I have 3 adopted disabled children, and I am disabled myself. I started Disability Pride Brighton when one of my children experienced an incident of disability discrimination in 2016, and I've run that ever since, although I am currently burnt out and I'm dying for someone to take it on. That's about it, I think.
Cool, thank you. Sydney?
Hi, my name is Sydney. I'm an old timer in BIMM terms. I was there in 2010 to 2012. I play bass in a kind of post-grunge style band based in Brighton. I have a vision impairment myself. I'm severely visually impaired. And I work for a couple of sight loss charities in life coaching and mentoring.
Thank you. So I'm Nazan. I met all these guys through their jobs, I think, actually. Yeah, I met you at Apple, didn't I? And Jenny through Disability Pride, and Sydney at one of her organisations that she works for blind people. So I'm a visual impairment mentor and disability activist, so actively working and participating with events and organisations that will help influence positive shifts. And I'm a yoga teacher to be, but it hasn't happened yet. But yes, so the first topic I wanted to open up, I would like Sydney to take this one on, if possible, because she would explain it a lot better than me. But the social and medical model of disability is something that I found out about through the training I had with Look, and I found it very empowering, and it's not something that I had heard about before, so it would be, I think, good to share, because I don't think it's widely known, and it's just a nice thing to know. So take it away, Sydney.
Okay. So yeah, I first came across the social model of disability actually when I started working for Look as well. And the social model of disability, to break it down, it basically sort of says that a disability, we don't want to see a disability as a disability, so we're going to change that word and call it an impairment. It's something that is affecting you. But what is disabling is not the impairment, and it is more the world around us. And the social model states that if the world around us was accessible, then our disability or our impairment would not be disabling. I hope that makes sense. That is the basis of the social model, and it is really interesting because if you think about that, I guess it's true, and I think it's a slightly tricky concept. But it's ambitious, but I like it. Like you say, Naz, it's quite empowering to think of it that way and to think of it, okay, maybe I have this impairment, but if the world was set up in such a way that it wasn't an impairment. To an example, things like a braille menu in a restaurant is a very rare thing. And if that was everywhere, that would be far less disabling to me. So that's just an example. But yeah, so that is the social model. The medical model is basically the opposite of that state. I haven't spent as much time studying it, obviously, because it's not. It's the opposite of empowering, but it very much focuses on the disabled person and almost how they're a burden on society in a way. So yeah, and how actually the world should not be shaped around a person with a disability. So yeah, they are the two main models. Obviously, the one we like to focus on is the social model.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like it because it makes the person who's disabled stop thinking, or help them in not thinking that they're the problem. But yeah, it's very easy to make things accessible, but there's still a long way to go. Like even with Brighton being a diverse place, it's still not inclusive. Just for example, went to a cafe earlier and sent an email to the manager just addressing some accessibility tweaks, like turning the lights up a little bit or highlighting the steps with a different, like a colour for visually impaired people to see. And there wasn't even like a ramp going in, which there could have been. So it's not accessible to wheelchair users or, it's just tiny little tweaks that could make a huge difference. But what do you guys think? Have you heard of this model that Sydney has talked about? Yeah.
I heard about it a few years ago.
Microphone.
Sorry. I heard about it a few years ago. I didn't know about it before I set up Disability Pride Brighton. But I mean, basically, the medical model is saying that the disabled person, that there's something wrong with them and that they should change to fit in with the world, which is obviously nonsense, whereas the social model says there's something wrong with society and that everybody should be able to fit in. So I think it's a great model.
Yeah.
I think that if we look at lockdown, that was like a really big kind of example of that and of society. So many people were forced into situations that we encounter daily, and the world reflected and changed and adjusted to that, because the every able-bodied person was also having to kind of deal with that. So for me, that was a really, it's interesting, and obviously I think it's a bit bittersweet that not all of that has kind of maintained following lockdown. I think there's a lot that can still be learned. I think people are very quick to forget what it was like to be kind of forced into that situation.
It was a bit of a leveller, wasn't it?
Yeah. But I think that, I think that there's still a lot we can learn from that, and that was probably one of the first examples in history where people have been forced to kind of experience what others experience on a daily...
Yeah, definitely. I felt that as well, like when the pandemic hit. I quite enjoyed it for a few months, because I was like, oh my God, everyone else is isolated just like me. So that's quite like a statement to say in itself, isn't it? But it's true.
It's true. If I'll be completely honest, I couldn't have graduated from BIMM without lockdown. Like, that's just how it is. Like, I had just recovered from a bout of sepsis. I was homebound, and I was literally having conversations with my lovely student support officer about not returning to BIMM because I just wouldn't be able to do it. And then suddenly we were in lockdown, and everyone's now housebound, and now my classes are accessible, and wow, I can access them, I can finish them, and I can also obtain a degree the same way everyone else can.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah, I like it. Okay, so my first question... my laptop. Okay. Is disability awareness important to you, and why? Jenny, you go first.
As I said, I've got 3 adopted children with various impairments and disabilities, and I set up Disability Pride after my daughter was thrown out of a pub. She was 19, and she was thrown out of a pub because she happened to duck down. There was loud music from the pub next door, and she was frightened, and we were being served with showing her ID. And then she stood up, and we were laughing at her and saying, "Oh, Charlie, it's nothing." And then the man said, "Out." And we were really shocked. And I said, "Oh, it's okay, she's disabled." She was shocked. And he said, "Out." And I explained about the Equality Act, and he didn't want to know. He said, "I can do what I like." And I was so upset, I went home and wrote a Facebook post about it, which then got shared all over, got picked up by the media, and that's what I had lots of people, hundreds of people write to me saying they'd had similar experiences. So that's what made me set up Disability Pride, and that was to raise awareness of disability. So I think it's very important. It's very important for people to think about disabled people as just a natural part of human diversity. And so many people kind of think of disability as a them and us situation. And the truth is that any one of us could become disabled at any time. So, there is no them and us. We're all just us. So I think it's really important to raise awareness that disabled people are just people.
Yeah, thank you, Jenny.
I'll jump in, because that was, literally, I realised I didn't include this in my introduction, sorry. I grew up with being visually impaired. I was born partially sighted and blind in my right eye, but only as ironically, it was such bad timing, it was when I started at BIMM, I got diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a connective tissue disorder. So I'd had like a lot of what we thought were growing pains growing up, and a lot of things that maybe weren't right, like asthma, which we thought it was, and other things like that. But only kind of then did it all start to surface, and suddenly I couldn't eat without using a feeding tube, and it all got really intense. So for me, it was really, that rings true a lot, where I'd had this really healthy childhood, to a point, and suddenly I was having to kind of learn how to navigate my early 20s with these severe kind of with this, severe disablement, and having to learn how to use mobility aids. And it's something that's really quite tricky, I think, in your early 20s. You're kind of navigating your life, figuring out what you want to do, all your friends are going out, and you just really don't feel like you fit in with that culture at the time. So for me, I think this is really important to me that we make, accessibility as transparent as possible, and as, we get it accepted by the world as much as it possibly can, because I think everyone deserves to feel part of what's going on around them. So I do feel like if we were to work harder to make it something that more people are understanding of, and I do think we're getting there in some degrees, then, I think people will find it easier to open up about. You'd be so surprised. Like, you would talk to someone and think, actually, there's probably, they don't have any idea about that, what it's like to live with an illness or a chronic condition or a disability. But actually, they do. It's just maybe not everyone is as comfortable opening up about it. So if we can open up, hopefully that would inspire other people to feel as comfortable.
Yeah, and I think people, every disabled person has the power to make these changes. Like, even with what we're doing now, is going to hopefully inspire some people and influence them to speak out about some things. So, we can add value in a lot of different ways. But yeah, thank you guys. Sydney.
Awareness is something I am massively passionate about, because I think, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say any bad experience that I can think of, any person that has reacted to me in a bad way or in a not so good way has been down to lack of awareness. I think, I had some tough social experiences at school, and I think the main thing was ignorance, and just most of my feeling at school was just that they didn't know what to do with me. The students and the staff, I think. And now I actually do a lot of talks. I go to schools. They mostly just want to hear about the dog, but if I can get them... Well, yeah, exactly. I think any bad experiences that I have had have been down to lack of awareness, and I think lack of understanding. And if people have that awareness and understanding, as soon as I talk to people, as soon as I do these talks, as Jenny said, we just need people to understand that we're all people.
Yeah.
Can I just add something to that? I mean, there's still a massive stigma. It's not as bad as it was, but a stigma about saying that you're disabled. So, there are many people who have depression or anxiety or one or another invisible disability, and they daren't say it. And that still goes on now. And people should be aware that there are lots of disabilities, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Thank you, Jenny. Before we move on to the next question, I don't think we actually stated what our conditions were, apart from Jess, but we were very vaguely. Just to, I think it would be good to say what they are to raise awareness about them, because some of them are very rare. And this is what the panel's about, like raising awareness about things. So to start off, I've got rod cone dystrophy, which is a visual impairment condition, and I'm registered severely sight impaired / blind. And I've also got a chronic pain condition called fibromyalgia. Like Jess said, she's got EDS and...
Yeah, I've got microphthalmia in my right eye, so I was born with that being severely underdeveloped. I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and a lot of the fun accompanying comorbidities that come with that, like they're really long-winded. Like, when you said some of them are really rare, I was like, mate, they're so long-winded. Like postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, superior mesenteric artery syndrome, they're so bizarre. And one other thing, which again is what you said as well, I just really resonated with, because I have bipolar type 2, and that was a recent diagnosis, and that's something I feel so much more comfortable talking about EDS and like my sight impairment than I do that, because I feel like sometimes people go, bipolar, oh, you're crazy. I'm like, no, just a little bit talkative maybe at times, yeah. Like a bit over talkative, but...
Jenny or Sydney?
Well, I went into being the chair and the founder of Disability Pride Brighton as a carer of disabled people, not realising that I have many disabilities myself. And since then, I've got coronary artery disease, so I had a stent fitted. I have got osteoarthritis. I had 2 operations in 2020. I've got something called prosopagnosia, which none of you probably have heard of, but it's face blindness. Yeah. Topographical agnosia, which sounds like nothing, but it causes me tremendous problems and is often linked to prosopagnosia, and it just means I get lost everywhere. I don't recognise anywhere. So prosopagnosia is face blindness, so I don't recognise faces. Unless I've seen you lots of times, I won't recognise you. So although it sounds like nothing, in the terms of neurodiversities, when people come and talk to me and I have absolutely no idea who they are, it's really embarrassing, and I feel bad because I feel that they're not important. They might feel they're not important, that I didn't remember them. I've also got anxiety, IBS. And last year, I had something amazing happen to me. A friend of mine who's a psychologist said to me, "Have you ever been diagnosed with ADHD?" I said, "No." And I thought, what's she talking about? And then because I'm not hyper. So I started doing research, and so many things resonated with me. And so I decided to have an assessment. And so last year, at the grand old age of 155, I was diagnosed with combined ADHD and complex PTSD. So that was absolutely amazing to find out that all the people I know who have ADHD, I never thought that I might be one of them, and I am.
It's quite relieving when you get a diagnosis, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, I can't compete with that. I was probably born, but discovered at 9 months, a form of cancer on my retinas called retinoblastoma. It's very rare. It's even rarer to have what they call bilateral, which is both eyes. So I had chemo, radiotherapy, saved my life, obviously, not my sight. Last year I had an operation to remove my right eye, and later this year I will be having the same operation to remove my left. So I've got my nice blue eye. I decided to go one blue, one brown, just for fun.
Can you pick the colours, did you say?
You can.
Wow.
Pretty much. So yeah, it's been, radiation cured the cancer, but it killed a lot of other stuff. So yeah, my eyes had sort of been not working since I was a baby, but also deteriorating, to the point of having these operations. So it's not over. Once they take out the second eye, it's over. And to be honest, I can't wait. I know it sounds weird. I really look forward to that because it's been years of checkups. When it's cancer, you have to keep checking that it's not coming back. So the thought that that's very soon going to be over is really nice.
Okay, thank you guys. Right, the second question. Have you ever faced any discrimination or ignorant behaviour linked in with your health condition or someone you care for? I know Jenny has covered this, so you don't need to say any more. But yeah, Jess?
Had it in the music industry, it was at a festival. So this was when I had my feeding tube in my stomach and really wanted to go to Slam Dunk Festival and just enjoy myself. As my boyfriend kept reminding me at the time, don't jump up and down, don't try and mosh with people, you will pull your tube out, we will go to hospital, it will be a nightmare. So I know, I was like, I'm going to be sensible, I'm going to book email them in advance, book the viewing platform, the disabled accessible viewing platform, because it's somewhere safe, I can be out of the way of all the massive throngs of people kind of jumping around, because at the time it was a tube that went from my stomach and it went to my backpack and I was getting just food on the go, really convenient. And it was... So we went up to the accessible viewing platform, and as I went to go up onto it, I had they give you a little wristband saying, yep, you're disabled, you need to have access to this. And as he and I went to go use it, the guy was like, whoa, what are you doing? You're not disabled. You don't, just because I wasn't in a wheelchair or using, I think I had a little stick thing, but a fold out one. I felt really I remember just at the time being like, I don't know if I need it just yet all day. So it was one that went in my backpack. I could just go, and it like just extended out. Yeah. Yeah, so it was in my backpack with the tube. And I felt happy that I didn't have to use it yet. I didn't feel like that was a bad thing. To me, that was a good thing. I was mobile that day, so we need to enjoy those moments when they come. And yeah, the guy was just like, absolutely not. You're not disabled. You're not going up on there. And in the end, I had to physically like lift my shirt to show my tube, and it just felt really like degrading, really embarrassing that I had to do that. And once he saw that, he was like, oh, okay. But I really had to explain, like,
oh my God.
Yeah, it was just really frustrating, especially as I'd emailed ahead of time to be like, this is my situation. Is this like festival able to accommodate me safely? And the answer was, yeah, we're super inclusive. And I was like, well, maybe tell your staff that. But that's kind of a big moment.
Oh my God, sorry that you had to go through that. Oh, Sydney, have you had any experiences?
I mean, I've had tons of experiences. Nothing kind of, there's no one big experience that comes to mind for me like that. I think, as I mentioned, I had just people in school who just didn't know what to do. A lot of the students just ended up just not talking to me because they just didn't know how to. So the easiest thing to do was to not. But I think, I mean, I've had various experiences. I was also with a partner who was a wheelchair user for 5 years, and that was intriguing. Two people with two different disabilities. People would just look at us and not know what to do at all. They would, to the point that I felt like they didn't know who to talk to. People would look at us and try and figure out who was less disabled to know who to talk to, which we found really interesting. When we met, she wasn't in a wheelchair, she was using a walking stick, and people would talk to her. And then as her condition degenerated, she was in a wheelchair and I was behind, and then they started talking to me. And we found that just a really interesting sort of transition as to who looked the most able-bodied, and that was who people would talk to. And people would never assume that the one pushing the wheelchair also can't see, which is also quite funny. It was entertaining. But yeah, I've had lots of people just not know what to do. I think the thing that I come across more than discrimination is panic. I'm sure disabled people have come across this, just pure panic of, oh my God, I don't know how to help you. And they end up not helping because they're trying so hard to help. I had a man actually fall off a train backwards because he was desperately trying to help me off the train. I felt bad for him. But I think, yeah, I guess I've been lucky in never having an experience like Jessie. It's always been, my disability has always been obvious. I've either had a cane or a dog, and people don't tend to question it. I actually had a guy run up to me in the street yesterday. I was just walking out to work with my dog, and he went, are you blind? Are you really blind? I was like, yeah.
Oh
really? And he was like, oh, I'm blind in one eye. Okay. Okay. It was like, no, you really, like, not just one eye, you're really, like, yeah.
Can I apologise on behalf of people blind in one eye everywhere?
It's fine. It's cool. I was so surprised. I walked away and I was like, did I actually say anything? I'm not sure. I was so shocked. I don't think I really responded. It was also first thing in the morning. Like, I don't know how to respond to you.
I swear we don't all ask that.
Can I just add something to that? I came back from Costa Rica last week. Yay! And
last month.
oh, really? Oh, wow. Okay. And
it's a good place to go.
It's amazing, yeah. So I came back and I had a sunflower lanyard on, and the people at the check-in desk talked to my friends about me, and I said, it's okay, you can talk to me, and he just ignored it, and he carried on talking to my friends. Well, one of them's a psychologist, and the other one is a very wise person, and they both ignored him. So in the end, he had to talk to me, but he just didn't want to talk to me.
Actually, you're
it's
right.
just bizarre.
Yeah. I think that is the pet hate, and that is probably the worst form of discrimination that I have had, is that happens so much, all the time. It still happens to me. And I've got friends who are really good and who just, yeah, literally, some will just look at me and say, talk to my friend. Some friends don't really know how to handle it, but that happens all the time. and it still happens, and it will probably, I wouldn't like to say it will always happen to me, but it has always happened. And it gets more frustrating the older you get. When you're a kid, people talk to the adult. And then when you're an adult and people are still talking to the other adult, that is a form of discrimination, I guess.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about this topic when I was putting this together, but that's quite a big thing, not knowing how to approach someone who has a disability. And I think, this could easily be taught in the education system. I wasn't taught anything about, I don't know what it's like now, but I know there's a lot more on mental health and stuff. But just how to approach someone who's got a condition, who's deaf or blind or autistic or any of them really. I think it's not that hard to talk to these people. They're people, Just for example, when Sydney came in, even though I'm visually impaired as well, and she's got Mac to help her, but I still wanted to help as well, and I said this is the step here, and I just tapped it so she could hear, and then just described everything that I could see so she could go around and sit down, and it's not that hard to do. It's not hard
it's
at
not
all.
Complicated.
I think people make it complicated than it is.
But that's what I mean when I say you come across so much panic, if I may say, blind panic. Is that too much? But people do. People sometimes people who've been with me have just laughed at the utter fear in people's eyes. And I actually do remember walking down the road with my dog, and there was a woman and a couple of kids in front of me, and she suddenly literally shouted. I was a few feet behind them, and she literally just went, "Move! There's a blind person behind you!"
What?
Yeah, blind, not deaf. But I'm like, yeah, seriously, is it that scary? Is it that scary that I'm walking towards you? And it was like, oh my God, get out the way. Just, the fear. Can we deal with the fear, people?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh dear. I've had one experience. Well, I've had probably more than one. I've had loads of experiences of.
Let's just backtrack that quickly.
I mean, this topic could take the whole time.
This one that stands out. It was in Brighton actually, and I was. This was when I was studying, and I was on a break and went to get some lunch. Had my symbol cane on me to highlight my visual impairment because mine is quite invisible during the day, you wouldn't be able to tell. Anyway, I was just getting a Subway, and this woman behind me, she taps my shoulder and goes, "Excuse me, you don't need that, you're not blind." And I looked, I was like, "What?" "I don't know you, you can't say that to me." I didn't say that, I didn't say anything for a couple minutes because I was in shock, and I was going through a hard time with living with sight impairment as it was. I hadn't come to terms with it then, and it was difficult, living day to day with it. And I didn't need someone to come up to me and say, "You don't have that." And then she goes, "You have pretty eyes, you don't have that." So it's just this stereotype, which we'll talk about in a bit. And at the time I was doing this sort of work, just starting to raise awareness for disabilities and stuff, and I couldn't have just let her sit there and thought that was okay. So I went up to her, and I just addressed, that's not okay. I don't know you. You have no right to say that, and try to educate her on it. But she just said that I was making a drama out of it, and then I just walked off and was a bit upset. But I think what you can do in situations like that, I've learnt, through experiencing so much of that, is offer to educate the person on what the disability is, and then if they say no, I don't want to hear it, or act like they just don't want to know, then there's nothing you can do, so you just have to leave it. But yeah, there's people like that. Yeah. Let's go on to the third question. I guess we like covering bits of these as we go along, but so tell me about any misconceptions related to your condition. How do you think the media have represented your condition? Because I think the media plays a big part in portraying our so like films and stuff. I think social media is a bit more has gone, you know what I mean.
The media doesn't help,
yeah,
for sure. You know, blind people touching people's faces in movies. We don't do that. I don't do that. I don't know anyone who does. Although I have recently watched Daredevil, and I'm loving Daredevil. He's a great portrayal. If you haven't watched it. But then I was talking to another blind person recently. If you don't know Daredevil, he's a blind superhero, and he's basically not blind because all of his other senses are so strong. And I think one person was saying they don't like that because then other people expect blind people to be like that. I'm like, no, really, he's a superhero. You would hope that people are clever enough not to think, oh, well, he's blind, but he can hear so well. The average human can't hear things, blocks away like he can. So, but yeah, there are bad portrayals in the media. Naz, your example of misconceptions of, but your eyes are so pretty, so why don't they work? That's quite a classic one. I've had that. People look at me and my eyes have, like I say, deteriorated over the years, but I think there have been times when it hasn't been at all obvious and people are looking at me going, but you don't look blind? So how does one look blind? Unless you're feeling someone's face. I don't know. But
I think I had a friend who I was just about to meet her, and she was like, someone just came up to me and was like touching my face and said they were blind, and and then I said, but my friend's blind, she doesn't do that. Yeah, I don't do that.
I've had more people touch my face than I've touched people's faces. Do you ever get this? There's extreme patronisation where people just go, oh, no, that's not okay. That really makes me angry, actually. That's a real hatred of mine. It's mostly men. I don't like to say that, but it's mostly old men who go, oh, bless you, bless.
That must be awful when you can't even see them coming
exactly.
towards you and somebody just touches your face.
Isn't it? That is a good reason not to do it.
Wow.
Don't touch a blind person's face. Aside from it being horrifically patronising.
Yeah, and I think it's the whole, I think we're all a bit blind, aren't we? We keep talking about blindness.
That is true. We're a bit VI heavy here.
Yeah. Yeah, the misconceptions of what blind looks like, I guess. Or even talking about other conditions, if we cover other conditions like autism.
We've
talked a little bit about invisible disabilities.
Yeah.
They don't look
deafness,
like anything.
Like they're all on a spectrum. Every condition's on a spectrum. People don't want to understand that unless it's...
I think it's really difficult because when we think about misconceptions with EDS, lots of people think it's just being hypermobile, and they just go, oh, you're double jointed. That's great, I wish. Might have actually been good at dance when I was younger and my parents really wanted me to get into it, but no. And it's actually, for me, it is so much deeper than that. It's a connective tissue disorder where your body doesn't produce enough collagen, and collagen, you need that in everything. So it's not just in your joints, your skin. Also, it means that all of my organs are too stretchy. They're too elasticated, so they don't work properly. Yeah, so people think, oh, you're just a bit double jointed. No, my heart has to work so much faster to pump blood around my body. My digestive system has to really work, and it struggles to even push food out of my stomach, which is why I had a feeding tube for so many years. And it's something that just on-off will keep coming back for the rest of my life. There'll just be periods of time where I need to have a feeding tube. And it's just really difficult because the media especially, it's one of those things where beforehand it took... The average diagnosis of EDS is 15 years, so it takes someone 15 years of first saying, I'm in pain or I've got problems, to then be diagnosed. For me, luckily, it wasn't... I was so fortunate that I went and saw my doctor and they just happened to know. They clearly wanted to be current and look up what things were coming out, and they knew about it.
That does not happen often.
No, she was pulling my skin going, oh, it's really stretchy, I think you have this, go see this specialist. And that honestly is so rare. And now that it's kind of having more of its day, there's finally like an EDS diagnostic service, so you'll never get referred onto it. It's the hardest thing in the world to get. Yeah. It's there, but it's not yet accessible. But because it's having its day, let's say, it is in the media more, and the main thing that's portrayed about it is, oh, they're hypermobile. And it's so much more than that. And I think there's sometimes a danger of oversimplifying things because it doesn't really put into practice what it's like. I remember when I had my feeding tube, at first it was really weird to get used to it. I started off with an NJ tube, which is on your face and goes down to your stomach that way. And people would stare so much, but when it went to a stomach, I missed that because I'm not well enough to always just like stand for half an hour on the bus. So I'd sit in a space, and if I didn't get up for someone because I was in pain or anything, I realised, oh no, there's nothing on my face now to show like that I'm unwell. People would see that, and immediately you're not going to say to the girl with the tube, excuse me, can you please move?
Yeah, this is why I use my symbol cane around, so people can see that, and then I won't have to explain why I'm sitting in that disabled seat, or if I'm asked to get up or expected to get up. So there's that.
But I think one of my favourite, in quotes, sort of misconception is that even if people are aware of our disabilities, they don't think we are capable of anything. I mean, Jessie, you work for Apple. You have a job. And people are constantly surprised by this. I remember I was flat hunting probably with my partner at the time, I think, and I was on the phone to an agency, and I'd answered all the questions about me, sort of, are you working? Yes. And then I mentioned at the end that I have a guide dog, which is illegal to refuse anyway, but I mentioned it out of politeness. And so when I said I had a guide dog and I was visually impaired, he then backtracked and sort of said, oh, but you are, we don't take benefits. And I said, no, I'm working full time. And he said it so loud that my partner at the time heard it from across the room down the phone. He went, you're working? Yes. Yes, I am. It's possible. It's possible.
I've got the perfect...
Surprise!
Yeah, I've got the perfect thing to feed off of that. I was listening to a video this morning, and this lady said this, and I had to write it down to share today, and then we could just feed off of that as well. But she said, disabled people need to be seen as people that can add value, not just people that are sat at home doing nothing. And if they are, that's because society's creating barriers that means that they can.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it depends on where you're looking as well. Like, obviously, some places will really make it hard for you, like, as you mentioned, to enter that. But I think, fortunately, there are more places now that are trying to be inclusive, and I really hope that's something that catches on. I remember when I went for my interview, they were like, tell us a time where you've kind of faced adversity or something, and I was like, you want me to dig? I was like, go on then, go on, you can have this. I remember like talking about my eye and how growing up it had been, trying to kind of overcome all the kind of self-consciousness that came with that. And they were like, that's a great answer. I was like, wow, this is the first place I've ever, gone for an interview in where they've actually encouraged and commended me bringing my disability into that workspace.
Yeah,
so that amazing. It was really wonderful. And I think if more places can kind of, like for instance, Microsoft, they now have an inclusive hiring practice for neurodiversity. So if anyone identifies as being neurodiverse, they have this whole separate hiring process that is tailored to be more inclusive for people who are neurodiverse. And that's incredible to me. I just think that's wonderful.
That's
but it shouldn't be incredible. Like it's still no. But it's still rarer than it should be. Yeah. Is my point.
I think there are many misconceptions. People think they know everything about disability. So me, myself, as I said, when I was diagnosed with ADHD, or my psychologist friend asked me if I'd got ADHD, and I thought, well, I'm not hyper, because I didn't know enough. I thought everybody with ADHD was forever getting up and going, sitting down and couldn't keep still. And another one that you mentioned, fibromyalgia, so many people think that doesn't exist. And they just say, oh, it's just in the head, same as ME and many, many other impairments. People think they don't exist and you're making it up.
Yeah, because it's a very complex condition in itself, and I still get people around me going, oh, it might go one day, like it's psychological. and that makes you like question yourself a lot, and it's a whole vicious like cycle in trying to find your sense of self over and over again, but people keep telling you you're making it up. And I've had people in the benefit system question my sight condition, even though I've got scans to prove it. I got diagnosed when I was 9 or 10, so everything's there on paper. But I had to go to tribunal for my PIP. I had 5 people sitting across from me, so like a doctor, a psychologist, this really horrible man, I don't know what his job role was, someone minuting, and another person. And I was just being questioned for like 2 hours, and they gave my PIP to me in the end, but it was horrible, just, trying to explain what's on paper already, and it's just, I don't have to, or why should I have to? It's hard in itself living with this condition as it is, and but did we have anything else to feed off of that statement that I made, or are we good to move on to the next question? So where do we need to go from here to make it a more united society? What improvements would you like to see?
How long you got? What a massive, massive question.
Yeah.
I think not forgetting what we learned in lockdown is a huge one for me. Like, everyone's just reverted back to beforehand. I mean, when we were in lockdown, everything was so accessible. We could all work from home, we could study from home. Like, I really enjoyed I was in like halfway through physiotherapy. My physiotherapist was like, if you can do yoga, then go for it. And I thought, that's so far to get to the closest place for me to do that. And then suddenly it's like, I can do that in my bedroom now, like in a lesson with someone who can actually access the things I needed to be able to heal and get stronger. And it was just amazing. There were all these things. I had a really full schedule. And I thought, oh my God, when was the last time I had a full schedule that existed outside of the house? So it was really wonderful just to be able to engage. And I felt, I hate to use that word, but I felt normal. Like, I felt like I could access everything the same way everyone else could. So for me, it's been quite disheartening to see everyone's being forced back to offices. Everyone's kind of being told that, we don't work remote anymore, or, even... I don't really know the situation right now, but even studying, I think that it's not there like it used to be in terms of when we were in lockdown. It was just, everyone was studying remotely. I don't know what's set up now going forward for people who need that. But, that would be the biggest take from me.
I think actually I hadn't even thought about this until you started saying this today, but the pandemic was a really good example of the social model of disability, wasn't it? Because everybody was sort of in the same boat, and so the world adapted to the pandemic. The world adapted to the way that everybody had to work. Suddenly you could get anything and everything delivered.
Yeah, so it is possible to adapt.
So it actually,
suddenly, isn't it?
Lockdown was a good example of the social model of disability, and it sort of proved that it worked in many ways. And I hadn't seen the link until you pointed it out. So
for me, I think that disability awareness training should be given everywhere. When my daughter had that experience at a pub, the managing director of that pub and 100 others, then he met with me and he assured me that from then on every single member of staff would have disability awareness training and how to recognise that disabled people might behave differently. And that was really important. And I think that, as you said earlier, that should be taught everywhere.
That's what I'd like to see.
There's so many disabled people, and it's just a really basic need to be taught that.
I agree. I think awareness is the key. Awareness is the answer. I think, it's like I said before, most of my bad experiences are down to a lack of awareness. Things being inaccessible, they're generally not... Things aren't hard for disabled people out of malice. It's generally lack of awareness. And I think, it should be taught. It should be standard practice it should be taught in school and standard practice in workplaces. And yeah, like I say, I don't feel like people are actively trying to harm disabled people or actively thinking, I could put a ramp in, but I'm not gonna. I don't think that's happening. I think it's just a lack of thought and a lack of consideration. And people aren't actively thinking, I don't want to do anything to help an autistic person. They're not thinking that. They're just not thinking about it. So, yeah.
Maybe some awareness of the law as well, the Equality Act, such as being...
How many times have I been refused with a guide dog?
Well, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I went to a conference with a friend who has an assistance dog, and although she'd booked, when we turned up, they said, I'm sorry, you can't come in, no dogs. And she said, no, I have an assistant dog. Luckily, she's a headmistress, and she's very, very strong-minded. And she says, you won't throw me out. And the man kept saying, I have to, I'm not allowed to do it. This went on and on and on. And obviously, we did stay, and she stayed with her dog. But the reasonable adjustments bit of the Equality Act is really important. And people just think, no, I don't have to do that. And they do. So I think an awareness of the law would be important as well.
You're right. Oh, yeah. I've been refused in cafes, restaurants, pubs.
So, oh, I agree with everything that you guys said, like the making changes in education, in workplaces. And another thing I'd like to see is like more events like this happening, and like festivals, and I think that's a great way to make noise about this sort of stuff. And I don't know, I'd like to get involved with some laws, like changing the laws and stuff, but I don't know, I wouldn't know where to start, but yeah, just more people talking about it, I guess. And more events like this, especially because I found that I've missed out on a lot of opportunities just because events aren't accessible. Like, I think even at uni, I remember just being indoors all the time. I think there was only a handful amount of times where I would go out with friends that I'd trusted that would look after me. But like events weren't accessible to me personally. Because they were always at night time and in dark venues. Yeah. I've got some music industry related questions now, as this is a BIMM event, and we all have connections with the music industry. So my question here is, what positive changes are already working in other parts of the country or at other institutions, and how could that be implemented in the BIMM and Brighton community? So I guess with your workplaces, maybe like Jess, you work at Apple, maybe the accessibility side of things could come in to work with places like BIMM, or Sydney, I guess, linking up your organisations with visually impaired students. Or I don't know, what do you want to feed off that question? Like, what positive changes are you seeing in other institutions that could be brought to the Brighton community? It's quite a big question, but...
I can talk about non-BIMM.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, just the most basic thing, I think, in Brighton is that the beach and the sea is still inaccessible to many disabled people. And this has been going on for years and years. I know that there's a steering group, I'm not part of it, but they've been campaigning for this for a long time. And there's so many places where they have really great accessible beaches and sea. For instance, I was in Lanzarote a couple of years ago, and they brought out this really simple but sophisticated thing where wheelchairs were just pushed into the sea with lots of people around them. It was just, I mean, I was crying. It was so heartwarming to see. And we still don't have that in Brighton and Hove. I mean, I just think it's awful. But anyway, that's mine.
So not seeing positive changes happen?
I think I haven't seen this for myself, no pun intended, as in I haven't been there. I had such a difficult experience at festivals in this country. I've been to Download a couple of times with my ex in a wheelchair. Download in a wheelchair is not easy. Once it's rained, you are in trouble. You are literally stuck in the mud. And I read about the Spanish equivalent of the Download Festival, which is it's about a month later, pretty much the same lineup and much better weather. And despite the fact that they don't have the rain to contend with like we do, there were pathways through the whole thing. So at the moment, what they do is they run a track. They have some boards down around the disabled campsite, and they try and carve a pathway from the main entrance to the disabled viewing platform. But that's it, really. And at this one in Spain, which unfortunately I read about, it doesn't exist anymore. But they had boards everywhere. They had boarded pathways everywhere. So you're not slogging through the mud. And I thought, actually, for most disabilities, that would make life a hell of a lot easier. When you're on wheels, definitely, but also if you're visually impaired, if you've actually got boarded pathways to follow, and you're not, I mean, God, if you put me in the middle of Donington, I'd be lost. It's massive. And things like that, I thought that was just a really simple thing to make a music festival more accessible. But it's quite simple. It's a big thing, but it's a really simple thing. And it's, well, maybe it's not a big thing, it's a small thing, but that would have a massive, massive impact, and I have not seen that done in this country.
We're not seeing positive changes, are we?
I think you asked if... Yeah, that's what you asked.
In
you
other
asked if we're
words.
seeing positive changes in other places. Yeah. I think Brighton's tricky. We were having a conversation before we started this today about venues in Brighton. Are tricky.
Yeah,
We've
like
got listed
ramps
buildings.
going on stages and
There's
stuff.
steps everywhere.
Yeah.
When I was with my ex, she hardly came to any of my gigs because she hated me. No, because because barely any of the venues that I was playing in were accessible. Either she could get into the venue and not be able to use the toilet because it was up or downstairs, or not be able to get into the venue at all. But there are listed buildings and there are limitations on what you can do. So I don't entirely blame the venue owners, but then I think there is a lot more that could be done, and it's all right. We broke up and I moved into a basement flat, so it's...
Oh dear.
I think something that could be a positive change, talking about, live music. I think we saw live music take a really big hit in lockdown due to COVID. And I know that there were lots of funds to try and keep music venues alive. And luckily it is a part of the culture that is resurfacing and getting more traction now that we're out of lockdown. I think that what would be really cool is to see more councils kind of create and designate that funding to make venues accessible. I think that sometimes when you're already a struggling music venue, with all the best intentions in the world, it might be hard sometimes to find the funds to put it into place, especially if it costs a bit more, to refurb and things. As you said, obviously there is the problem where some are listed buildings, and that kind of is another hurdle. But I think if there were more support from local councils to help facilitate these changes in music venues, then that would be a really positive change.
You're right, yeah. The two biggest issues, awareness and money.
Yeah, I guess the next question feeds off of what you just said. So how does your disability impact your creativity and feelings about having a career in the music industry? So we've all had some links with either being a musician or setting up a festival for musicians. Jenny actually had a ramp on her stages at Disability Pride Festival, and I'd never seen that before. An actual ramp to a stage, guys. It's possible.
How simple. So simple.
But also, I would just like to say that to make a venue, I mean, it was on Hove Lawns the last twice, to make a venue fully accessible for all disabilities is horrendously expensive because you have to cover everything. And as you may remember, we had a discussion for about a month about whether to put down a track for wheelchairs, because if Hove Lawn stayed dry and it hadn't rained, then we would be fine. But it was going to be an extra £5,000 just for one day to put down something that wheelchairs wouldn't get bogged down in the mud. And we had that discussion over and over and over again. In the end, we decided not to go for it because we just didn't have the extra £5,000. And, you know, fingers crossed we were okay. But everything is just so expensive, and it shouldn't be like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think your festival was as accessible as it could be. I always loved going to Disability Pride Festival. It was like the day I would look forward to in the year, because everyone that goes either they all get each other, they all understand. It's an accessible event. I would just go around like all the stalls, like talking to everyone and participating in everything that I could, like speaking on the stage, performing on the stage. I loved it.
Why don't you take it over then?
If I have a team behind me, maybe.
Exactly.
And some funding.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you feel that disabilities could be better represented in the music industry? Have you seen any examples of positive role models and champions of disability that have shaped your journey?
Can I be really annoying and go back to your previous question just for 1 sec? I'm
Go
really
for
sorry.
it.
It was just something that you said that I thought was quite, because it's something that other people might also kind of struggle with. Like you and I, we were both in bands and we loved that. And I think for me, I was in an alt rock band, and it was when I could like jump around on stage and headbang and really get into it that I enjoyed it the most. And something that was really bittersweet for me is as my conditions kind of deteriorated, is I couldn't do that anymore. I couldn't tour. There's the idea of having to drive in a car and live in a car for, you know, a few weeks to go all over the place. That is just so overwhelming. One, where am I going to put all my meds and everything? How do I keep things sterile? Also, just on my body, like my bones would be so exhausted. And it's just the kind of act of the physical aspect of it. So something I really struggled with at first was I was just really grumpy with the industry because I just wanted to be part of it, and I wanted to still be that person who could play in a band and jump around and just enjoy myself. So I think I feel like if anyone else were to ever be in that position, just try and keep hold of what you love about the industry. Like for me, I found another passion, which was making jewellery, and I thought, how can I still stay in the industry like that? How can I still have ties within the industry? How can I keep my passion for that alive? Because that's something I definitely want to work in. So it was just, for me, it was looking at, okay, so here are bands I really love and respect, and they were a similar vocal style to me, a similar genre. Can you wear my jewellery? Like, can I sponsor you? Can you keep me in the industry through wearing what I'm creating? And that, I just found so much empowerment through that, and it really helped me to kind of make peace with how my role had changed. I still songwrite, I still love doing that, and I think occasionally me and my partner, who did the guitar course at BIMM, we write music sometimes just to put out so we can still, you know, enjoy, we can still create, but being able to actually have a business that allowed me to stay inside what I loved doing was really therapeutic.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool. Find a way.
Yeah.
There will be a way. I mean,
Yeah.
I've always thought I will not let this stop me. There's elements of being in the music industry that are just not designed for people with disabilities. It's a hard industry to be in.
Yeah.
I think one of the things for me that I find really hard is like I love gigging, absolutely love it, love live music, but loud music and not being able to see is really difficult. Like,
I agree.
I always say I am twice as blind when I can't hear. It's, you know, if I'm watching other people, like I had a gig last night, and when I wasn't playing and the other band was, I'm like, it's really, really hard. You know, it's really hard to order a drink at the bar when I can't make eye contact and I can't hear them. It's really, really difficult. And I think that what gets me through that is sheer determination and also being surrounded by the right people. You know, I've got a really lovely band who took me on. And they didn't have to. They could have a bass player who could see, and they wouldn't have to help. So it is about having the right people around you as well. And I think the sheer stubbornness not to let it stop you, which is obviously, Jessie, you've done that in your way. And I've just thought, actually, yeah, it'd be easier if I was doing something quiet, where I could hear everything. But where's the fun in that? Like, that's not what I want. That's not what I want to be doing.
We don't like to make life easy for us.
Well, no, that's part of having a disability, I think. You can't live in a world where life is, well, no, you can. But it's funny how a lot of disabled people seem to choose not to live in a world that's really easy for them. Maybe that's a choice we're all making. I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of aspects of the industry that are very inaccessible. You can't really turn the music down when you're ordering at a bar, or turn people's voices down, or ask for them to turn the lights up because it's just the mood of the venue. There's a lot of things. And when I was gigging a lot, I just ploughed through it and did quite a few gigs when I was in a band, but they didn't necessarily help me with my sight. I think as much as they could, but it's that thing again, like, how do we help this person? And it was just me having to ask again and again, like, can you walk me home? I can't see in the dark at all, and they just wouldn't get it. But I had this photographer who came to every single gig of mine, and he would support me. But I think he understood because he had a lot of disabilities himself. And I don't think I would have been able to gig if he didn't come to every single gig from the start to literally every single one of my gigs. So I just need someone to link arms with, to just, navigate me around the venue, to take me home. It was really difficult because I loved music so much, but it just became exhausting in the end. It does take your passion out of you a little bit, but I think, like you said, find a way. And that's what you've done.
It's like allyship. I think allyship is huge, and it's so important. I think when you've got, even if it's just one person who is willing to support you and kind of be in your corner and just make sure, they're like, what do you need of me? And I think that just speaks volumes. Though I had it the opposite, when my band would tell me off. So I'd jump on stage and they're like, you won't be able to walk tomorrow. Can you not be so irresponsible, please? But
you don't regret it, though, do you?
You need people who look out for you. You do. You do need that. Whether you want it or not, you need people who look out for you. You definitely do.
Sometimes I'd be like, just let me live. I just want to live like a normal person, which was my excuse because I knew that I shouldn't be doing it.
So this is the last question before we open up to the audience. I said it, but I think I don't even remember what I said.
Sorry.
How do you feel that disabilities could be better represented in the music industry? Have you seen any examples of positive role models and champions of disability that have shaped your journey?
I think one of my favourite stories is Def Leppard in the 80s, and their drummer was in a car accident and lost his arm. And there was, and I read a lot. I actually did a research thing on them when I was at BIMM all those years ago. And there was never a question of getting a new drummer. The band just didn't even consider it. So they had a 4-year hiatus while they figured out how he was going to be the drummer. And he had a bespoke kit made for him. I haven't seen it, obviously. I think he does more with his feet than the average drummer. And he's still doing it. And I just love that story. I love his determination to still be a drummer with one arm. And I love that his band stuck by him and absolutely they did not go on without him. There was never a question. And I just think that's a really great story, the one-armed drummer. And he's, like I say, they're still going.
So the message again is to find a way and also have support around you.
Yeah, I think it's the combination of the self-determination and the right people.
Yeah.
There's a singer who I really admire, Austin Carlisle. He's the lead singer of Mice and Men and Attack, if anyone knows any of those bands. But obviously that's the genre that I love anyway. So the fact that he was someone I could identify with. So Austin has Marfan syndrome, which is very similar to Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. It's another connective tissue disorder. And he would still tour through all the pain. You know, when I saw them live in London, and I would never have thought he had any sort of, you know, connective tissue disorder that would cause pain. And looking back at it now, I'm thinking, oh my God, would you have suffered the next day after the show we saw? But he did it anyway because it was his passion and that's what he loved. And he also wrote songs about, you know, there was one song called Pain, and it was about just kind of dealing with that on a daily basis. And it sounds a bit morbid, but actually it's a really great way to just put everything into light. It's a great way to raise awareness for that. And there's a few people that I've met who actually did go to BIMM. One is my friend Joe, and he has cystic fibrosis, and he was in a band, and he toured loads when he was younger, before he joined BIMM actually, and he never let it stop him either. So I thought these people, to have these role models, it was really wonderful. Even when I had my tube put in, I thought, no, I'm not ready to give up yet. I'm still going to tour, I'm still going to play. I've got some wicked photos of me with like tubes hanging out and stuff on stage. It just looks really cool, and it's like a really good memory for me now to look at that and go, wow, look, I had that, and I was playing music and I was doing something I loved. And I think that when you've got people like that you can align with, and people like that who are doing their best despite everything, I think it's really inspiring, and it's nice to have those role models to kind of egg you on when you feel a bit overwhelmed.
I think you're your own role model as well. No, it's true.
For sure.
Superhuman. Role models. Okay, we've talked about this. How do you feel that disabilities could be better represented in the music industry? That was the first part of the question that I don't think we've covered so much, or have we?
I think just, obviously, all we need is people to see people with disabilities in the music industry. And I appreciate that's not always possible with invisible disabilities. But, you know, the more it happens, the better.
Yeah.
People need to believe that it's possible. And I think the way that people believe it's possible is by seeing that other people have done it. And it's like we've said about our role models. They have proved to other people with the same conditions that it's possible. You know, Stevie Wonder, big, massive name, blind musician. You need to see people doing it for people to think, yeah, okay, it is possible. And I think to help the music industry is just keep encouraging people to do it, and the more people see other people doing it, the more they'll think, yeah, you know, I can do it too.
I think there are so many people in the music business and in, you know, actors and whatever that actually have invisible disabilities that they don't want to share. So I think if people could be a lot more open and more visible about their disabilities, it would help other people think, well, you know, they've got autism, they're disabled, and it might help them feel more able to do things.
Yeah, I agree. I think also using music to express these topics, subjects as well. I used to write a lot of depressing songs about depression and losing my sight and stuff. But it hopefully, but then it sort of mixes in with. There's also you can look at it. How do I word this? Like, music is also entertainment, so people don't always look into it that much.
People do also love music they can relate to.
Yes, that's true.
People love lyrics they can relate to, for sure.
That's true.
So I think if you are going to write about yourself and be honest, there'll be someone out there that it resonates with.
I think that as well, if you can get opportunities to talk about what your music means, then that's really cool, because I remember we wrote one song called Misery. I swear it's not as depressing as it sounds. It just sounded really cool, that word, like on the refrain. So, but we used that, and that was a song about me coming to terms with my disability and kind of like moving on and accepting that. And the lyrics, though, you could easily relate them to kind of being in a tumultuous relationship or something like that. So I tried to think about how to make it accessible for everyone, even if they weren't just, you know, in that position. But I think that what I would really have liked to have done is if you do, you know, write songs about accessibility, about your disability or conditions, something that's really cool is finding the space to discuss that. Like, I know at BIMM there are lots of ways to get in touch. You know, there's music journalism students, they're always wanting to partner with bands to write pieces on their music, and we were very fortunate that our bassist knew someone on that course, and they did a little article for us for the Argus, so we had that space to talk about that, and I could bring that up in that setting. So I think that if that's something you're passionate about, then find every way to kind of bring it into the limelight. If you're writing a song, make sure people know what it's about, make sure they know what's inspired it, because that is really something quite amazing, and that you'll never know how much that could help someone else.
I agree. Right, thank you, guys. We've come to the end of our questions. So now, open discussion. If there's anything else that's wanting to be said from you guys first, and then open it up to the audience. Is there anything else that you guys want to rant out?
We've done quite a lot of that, yeah.
So coming back to the question from you over there, just to recap, it was about...
parents, like, how did you deal, how did your parents take you being disabled? Basically, how did, like, some parents, like, a lot of parents are really supportive, you know, they'll help, but a lot of parents will also be in shock, and be in shock for many parts of their life, and they'll do very stupid things because of that shock.
Yeah.
And, I don't know, I don't know if you guys have experienced, like, how have your parents dealt with your disabilities growing up? Sorry, I also apologize that touch you, so I understand.
Oh, no.
I'm really keen to answer this, if I may.
So am I. You go first.
So I've had an incredibly supportive family. I cannot fault my family. My mum particularly has been there through everything. Obviously, I had cancer as a baby. You might have, I don't know when you came in. You came in a little bit late. I put my mum through hell, basically. And she's been there through everything. And yeah, my dad has been extremely supportive as well. But my dad has had a case of denial. And my eyes have been broken beyond repair since I was a baby. And, you know, I said at the beginning, they've basically been getting worse. And it took him until I was 21 to stop taking me to different specialists, thinking one of them was going to have the cure that all the others didn't have. And I felt sad for him. And it took to the... And 21 was actually the first time that one of the doctors said, actually, I think you're going to lose the eye. And I said to my dad, right, you know, that's it now. It's not getting better. I didn't know I was going to lose my eye before then. So I had gone into that. I remember it was a really hard day. I'd gone into that not with false hope like my dad did, but I did not expect to hear that it was going to get worse. You know, I thought, I'm already blind. How much worse can it get? And I said to him at that point, I said, you are not doing this to me again. We're not doing this to yourself again. And even, like I say, last year, I was 29 and I had my first eye removed, and yeah, this year at 30 I'll have the second. And even when the date was set, my dad was still going, well, surely there's something else they can do. And I said, no, the eye it's dead. To the point that the part of the issue was it had lost all of its pressure, and he literally said, well, can't they just inject some pressure back into it? I'm like, Dad, it's an eye, not a flat tyre. It's just... And even, so literally the last couple of weeks is since I've discovered that my left eye has deteriorated so much that it's time for that to go too. And I told my dad this the other day, and I said, look, I'm having the operation on the second eye. And he said, no, you're not. And I said, yes, I am. And so, yeah, denial has been a big part of it for my dad. He just can't deal with something that is just wrong and just can't be fixed. Yeah.
I think a lot of people just go through life thinking that it's like the things that they've seen or heard about happen to them or to their children, and it's just they don't know what to do. Like a lot of panicking with misconception of meeting people. They
And parents want to fix their children. All parents want to fix their... Parents don't want something wrong with their child, because it's their child. They want their child to be okay. And even, you know, God, I'm about to turn 30 and my dad is still like, I don't want you to go through that operation again. And it's hard for parents. And I think I've just been really upfront with my dad. Since I've been an adult, I have had to say to him, this is it. It is not going to get better. You need to find a way to deal with this. I've dealt with it. I'm okay with the fact that it's not going to get better. I mean, I made my peace with it a long time ago. And I've just said to him, please stop. By giving yourself false hope, you're just hurting yourself. And I've just had to be really upfront with him. But yeah, like I say, it took until I was 21, and even that was nearly 10 years ago, and I'm still having to say to him, you can't inject pressure into my eye. Like, just...
Thank you for showing that. I understand that very well. Yeah.
I want to answer as well. So I think being in denial is a part of the process, like for parents. I didn't really have much support growing up at all because my parents were so in denial, always trying to find a solution to fix the problem. Even like now, one of them will go, "Oh, there's someone in India that can heal you," or there's a doctor in Turkey that can fix you. They fixed this blind person, and I'm just like, please, can you stop thinking of a solution to fix the what's going on, the condition, and like making it a problem in that way. I've always been quite accepting of my condition and always have tried to use it as my driving force towards my purpose, and it's a gift to me. It's my superpower, but my parents see it as a fault, and yeah, I didn't have much support in terms of like access to services or help in education. I just had to like do it all myself, and I've had this condition all my life, but I didn't have support in primary school or secondary school. I started getting more support at uni, but it was still difficult because I didn't know where to go really. And then over the past few years, I've had some things put in place for me and some funding for equipment, and it's taken years and years and years and years to do that. But my parents didn't support me in that way. They support me in other ways, but I think they just don't know how to. And also I've had another setback where my dad was an immigrant, and they don't know, and my mum can't speak English very well, so there's that setback as well, because just not knowing what's available. I guess there's more available here than there would be in Turkey. So I'm lucky to have been brought up here, because I wouldn't have had the privileges I have here there. So having pretty much everything funded, my housing, my benefits, my daily living, everything is funded here. But it took me years to fight for that as well, but I have it, so I'm grateful for it. But yes, that's the answer to the parents' question.
I think...
I want to... I'm so sorry for bringing them up, but I'm so happy. Like, I wanted to say
Sydney. Sydney.
I don't know how to say it, but I just want to say it's clear that your parents love you very, very much, and they have all your life. And no reason they would have felt that way.
Absolutely, of course. And Nazis
Same
do
for
as
you.
well. Nazis do as well. And I was going to say, the denial thing and Naz, not being well supported, that's not a lack of love.
No.
And the denial is easier. And they think they're helping by saying, hey, I found a doctor in Venezuela who can fix you. That's out of love.
Yeah.
It might be misguided, and it might actually really not be helping, but it's supposed to. It's their way of trying to help. So you're right.
I think this quote really helped me accept, because I was quite angry towards my parents for a long time, but this quote really helped me, or this sort of message, was your parents do what they can with what they know, like all that they can with what they know, even if it's not a very nice relationship at all with your parents, it's all they know.
And sometimes I think our disabilities are harder for them than they are for us. You know?
Yeah.
I think everyone's going to go on a different journey with the people in their life who care about them when they look at their own acceptance, because of course we have to accept what's happening to us, but then there's also acceptance from the people who care about you the most. So everyone, that journey is going to look very, very different. It's just kind of taking it together, I think, if you're fortunate enough to be able to. For me, it was very different. Like, my mum was, bless her, like, she felt guilty. She's like, I cooked you, it's my fault. And I'm just like, that's not true in the slightest. I do not blame you at all. You do so much for me.
My mum went through guilt as well.
Yeah, it's harder for them, I think. They have all these extra... I don't feel guilty that I'm like this. I'm just like this. But, you know, they do. And when I was younger, because of my eye back then, I had lots of reconstructive surgery to make it look more like the other, because when I was born, it was very much, it looked a lot different. And she was like, right, I don't want you to be nervous. I'm going to throw you into everything. And I did dance and drama and, like, singing all from such a young age. And, like, I'm so grateful for that, because it put me on the path that I'm on and it got me into this industry. And, you know, it's something I still love doing to this day. So... everyone's going to tackle it, whereas someone else might go, that's a bit, you know, excessive, isn't it? Just let her deal with it on her own. But, you know, for us and the type of people we are, that really worked. So I think it's, yeah.
That's okay. Is there any...
As a parent, can
yeah.
I do
yes.
Well, my experience is different because I adopted my children. So I went into it when they were 2, 3 and 3, and I knew that one of my daughters was severely disabled, but then they said, oh, well, when she gets into a stable environment, she'll thrive. You know, she was diagnosed with failure to thrive. And actually, I mean, she can't ever thrive. You know, she can't read or write. And she's got 2 rare genetic disorders. So, you know, there's no way she can get better. But I went into adoption very naively, and when you fill out the form, it sounds terrible, but me and my husband at the time thought that we wouldn't be able to cope with anybody with a mental disability, but we said that physical disabilities would be fine, and we actually ended up with 3 children with quite severe mental disabilities. So, and it's been difficult, but I think what you said about the guilt, I was going to mention that because they're not my biological children, there's no guilt, which of course there shouldn't be, but parents do feel that, oh my God, this is my fault that my child is disabled. And obviously I don't feel that, so I'm not really, I can't really comment on that. The only thing I would mention that is my ex-husband with whom I adopted the children is completely accepting of their disabilities, but he will not accept that one of my daughters wants to be a man. That's too far for him to accept. So.
That's a whole different issue.
Yes, let's stick to disability, guys. Is there any more questions from the audience? Bex, could you help me with this one? Thank you.
Good point. How do you get them? I think this is where we were saying earlier, it needs to be taught.
Yes.
You know, it needs to be...
say the same.
It needs to be taught in school. We need to teach children, because, you know, I've done a lot of talks in schools, and children are so receptive and they just ask questions. Children are not afraid to ask questions, which I love about talking to children. They don't worried about offending you. One of them, I did a reception talk a couple of weeks ago, and one of them just went, "Why have you got one eye bigger than the other?" I'm like, "Oh, okay, all right, we're doing that now." Okay,
It's my favourite question from children.
yeah. And I'm really aware now that my prosthetic eye looks better than my real eye, and I can't wait to have them even. I'll be honest, because this kid just went, "Why have you got one eye bigger than the other?" And I explained, and she went, "Well, you just look a bit funny." I love the honesty of children. I love the honesty. Like, yeah, okay, I'm dealing with it. I'm dealing with it. But I think the younger the better, because actually you're right. You're absolutely right. In how do you get to people, and how do you the people who are already interested will come to an event like this, and I think we should be teaching this in school. We should be, because like I say, the worst of my problems in particularly in secondary school, primary school, kids just kind of took it as I was. Because you tell a 5-year-old, hey, this person can't see, they're like, all right, that's it. They don't ever think it. And then you get to secondary school and they're going, oh, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to say. And I think the answer is the young people. I don't know how to fix the people past that point now. It's a really, really good question. If you've got a better answer than mine.
I've got an idea. I feel like, sadly, it is up to the people who attend this sort of session. The people who come to these events are the ones who are going to create real positive change by being advocates for this topic and this issue. And I think that, you know, I don't know about everyone else, but whenever I attend events like this, either as a panellist or as a spectator, I always feel really motivated after, and I think, God, I've got so many great ideas now that I just want to go and implement, or maybe it's challenged me to think a bit differently about this. And I think by living it every day and being active and actively looking for areas where, say you're walking down the street, you see something, you're like, oh, that could be better. Or you're at BIMM and you're in a lesson and something comes to you and you think, oh, there's actually a little bit, I think I can think of a more accessible way of doing that. Then for me, that's when the real change begins, because unfortunately, you hit the nail on the head. The people who don't want to attend these sessions, they're not going to attend them. So it's up to us to kind of create those thought-provoking moments of change for them in everyday life scenarios. I don't know if that's helpful or not.
And also, I think you guys who are here, go and tell the people who weren't.
Yeah.
You know? Not that I'm saying it's all on you, but help us out. You know?
I just shove this information in people's faces all the time, just on my socials, like. And this is also being recorded, so if students do want to access it, then they can. So you can tell your pals about it, so they can watch it.
If you found it useful, tell other people. The whole reason Disability Pride came about was because Jenny posted a really angry post on Facebook, which I saw, and it went viral.
Yeah.
Because people were like, "Oh my God, I can't believe this has happened." That's kind of how change happens, isn't it? It is spreading the word.
And making noise.
Making noise.
There'll be plenty of opportunities while at BIMM as well to introduce that change for yourself. Like Sophie, I'm going to call out your student who is doing as part of their project. I might not get it all right, but they're doing a disability kind of festival as well, right? Where they're doing a
music and arts festival, and it's going to be a platform to present and display people with disabilities and opportunities for them, which is very, very rare, but we give them that opportunity.
So there you go. So that's someone just off their own back at BIMM just doing this for their project. So I think if something's...
No pressure.
There's the bar. No, I think if there's if you feel passionate about something and if you feel strongly about something, then there are definitely ways. There's nothing stopping anyone from going to, someone at BIMM, one of your tutors or someone on the student support team saying, hey, look, I've got this idea I want to do. Like, for instance, Naz, you mentioned that lots of the BIMM kind of end of term stuff and the... like, I think lamplight, right? The whole idea is it's meant to be cute and in the dark. Not overly accessible, I suppose, if you can't see, right? So there's nothing stopping anyone going, hey, I want to do the opposite of this. I want to do, like,
a day festival.
Yeah, or a Day of 1,000 Nights festival, something like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can think of something... If there's an idea, there's so many people that you can collaborate with, and that's the amazing thing about going to somewhere where everyone is doing something in the music industry. You've got music journalism students, music business students. Think about what could be done if all of those students collaborated together to create something amazing. And I think that's something that I probably wish I'd have engaged a bit more in at BIMM. I definitely dabbled in areas, but I think now if I was doing that as I am now, I definitely want to take it more, by the horns and just be like, hey, this is an idea, let's do this. I probably hate myself after for saying that when you've got things due in. Maybe, I don't know who's in first year or what, but try and do it first and second year maybe. But
Oh, that was so inspiring, can I just say? That was so motivational.
Did you have another question, or was...
Yeah, I did. So I'm autistic, and one of my things is I can't let anything go, like, ever. And you get people that don't believe me when I say things. It's easier for them to think I'm lying than to try to understand my logic reasoning. And so things like that and injustice really get to me, and you guys, particularly the example with the lady in red, when someone was arguing with you about your own disability, like someone like that is beyond, it's not just ignorant, they're leaning into it, refusing to adapt, and it's a lost cause. So how do you not murder?
Whoa.
I wasn't expecting that.
I wouldn't want to
Listening
give
very
any advice.
intensely.
Yeah.
And then how do we murder people?
So Naz, how do you refrain from killing?
Like I said, when I said that example, you can either educate someone or you just have to... I mean, it's their loss if they don't want to be educated and adapt to what's going on. I know it's frustrating, but that's the best thing you can do. And I'm sure you try to explain that you have autism and these are the symptoms of it, and this is why you are the way you are, and all of this. And if someone doesn't want to listen to you, then just let them walk away. And
There has to be acceptance,
yeah,
which is hard, but there has to be, I mean, I'm a therapist, so excuse me, but acceptance. You can only control you. You can't control other people.
yes,
Yeah.
So we can control what we're doing here. We can hope our message gets through to people. And Naz, I think what you did after she had shocked you so much and you still went to talk to her...
I had a panic attack straight after.
Yeah, but that was an
Quite
amazing
brave,
thing
yeah.
to do. You did what you could, and you couldn't have done more. And you can't change her mind. You can talk to her, you can try, you can educate somebody. But beyond that, you cannot leap into someone's brain and flick that switch and make them understand. And that is the point where you have to let it go and accept that you can do what you can do. You can't change a person's mind, and it's probably best not to kill them.
Yeah,
I think
that's
that you
good
would
advice.
hate to be, you'd hate to find yourself in a position where you don't know how this person will react. So by continuing to have that conversation, you wouldn't want to find yourself in an unsafe position if that were to escalate. There's like the quote that I got today was, you'll face many defeats in life, but never allow yourself to be defeated. I think as long as you know as Naz did in that situation, you did what you could. You explained, you said, actually, I'm going to challenge that way of thinking because this is actually how it is. If they still refuse to accept, you've done what you can. You know that you've put everything into it. You sadly, I mean, if these people are already ignorant, sadly, then probably they might not all change their mind over a conversation, but maybe some will. And I think it's take the wins where they are, but obviously you don't want to escalate it to the point where you would find yourself in a position that is not comfortable for you.
Yeah.
Something that really helped me once, you were talking about being a therapist. A friend of mine is a therapist, not the psychologist one, a different one. And she gave me a piece of paper that said "the gift" on the top. I said, "What's that?" And she said, "It's the gift," because I used to feel injustices so strongly. And she said, "It's the gift to allow people to think what they like of you." And that just was a real eye-opener for me. And I know that people are ignorant about disabilities, and maybe you could try to educate them, but then don't carry it round with you, because when I've really felt injustices so strongly, it's me that's been affected by it and carried it round with me for days and days, and they've probably never even given it a second thought. So yeah, I think, if you want to try to educate, but then let it go, and it's hard to do that. I'm speaking from experience, but yeah.
Mindfulness helps, I think. If you struggle with that in particular, it's quite a good practice, but...
Yes.
Yeah. Don't waste your energy on killing anyone. I think we need to wrap up.
Oh, there was
pretty
one last
soon.
question, wasn't there, over there?
Oh,
I think.
okay.
Do we have time? Is that okay?
Do we have time?
I don't want anyone to be left out. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, we won't all go on. Yeah.
So I'm quite proudly autistic. I express how I am on all my social media platforms, and obviously I try and represent the autistic community the best way I can in my own perception. And my main question was, in terms of getting jobs, I'm in year 3 and I'm about to graduate and all that stuff. What advice would you give someone who has a disability like mine, especially as it's invisible? Not everyone would look at me and think I've got a disability. So what advice would you give someone?
Well, the Equality Act would hopefully protect you in, being able to get a job.
There's the guaranteed interview scheme a lot of people follow, which is if you tell them you have a disability, if you meet the minimum requirements, you can have an interview. And I think being honest, and I think also try and find ways that your autism might help you do the job as opposed to hinder you.
Say that.
Find ways of telling them what an asset you're going to be and not. You need people not to see you as a problem when you have a disability. So you need to just, autism or not, disability or not, do what anybody else would do in an interview and point out why you're going to be good at this job.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's perfect. I say, look at where you add value. Sometimes it's so easy to just completely allow what we have to envelop us, but you are unique and you have your way of thinking is something they probably lack in their company. So I think that by looking exactly as you said, Sydney, by saying where's my value, what value do I add, what are my strengths, where do I kind of thrive where other people might struggle, where someone else has gone, I'm not sure how to approach this, and you've gone, well, that answer's easy to me, I would do it this way, then that's incredible. And don't be afraid to bring, I don't know if that's bad advice or not, but I would say never be afraid to bring it up. Like when I had my interview and I had to kind of give my example, obviously that was initial panic, but then I thought, no, this is part of me and this is my answer, so I'm going to bring that in. And they really appreciated the honesty in that. So I think that, be honest, play that to your strengths.
Can I just ask you, Jessie, did you tell them you had bipolar?
I didn't have that at the time.
Ah, okay. It's very difficult. This is something that comes up all the time. Should I tell them about my disability? It's a really difficult question. I mean, obviously, in the ideal world, you should be able to because you are who you are, but it's hard, isn't it? Hard. And hopefully it will get easier and better.
Okay, that was sort of a quick response.
That was as quick as we could do.
I hope that helped. Yeah, we're going to have to wrap up really quickly. But thank you to those who have come here, and I hope that this has been inspiring to you. And maybe you could talk about it with your friends, or I don't know, it might inspire you to put a post up and write your thoughts or something. But yeah, keep making noise like we are, and hopefully things will change and in a positive way. And don't see your conditions as a setback or a limitation. As we said earlier on, it's everything else that is the problem, not you. But yeah, thank you so much, and thank you for BIMM for helping me put this together. And
thank you to Naz for hosting as well.
Amazing
Inviting
job.
us.
Amazing.
Thank you to you guys as well.